Gabriel Knight, Sins of the Fathers. Daddy did a bad thing and he feels like crying. Gabriel Knight is a point-and-click adventure game with horror themes, created by Jane Jensen and developed and published by Sierra Online in 1993. But today we are talking about the 20th anniversary edition, which features remastering the graphics and music while adding new voice cast and slight changes to the story events. Our story takes place in 1993 in the French Quarter of New Orleans. Good old New Orleans. We take the role of the titular character, Gabriel Knight, who is a struggling horror novelist looking for inspiration on his new book. He works alongside his shop assistant, Grace Nakamura, and longtime friend and police detective, Frank Mosley. Recently, Gabriel has been having terrible nightmares. Fragments of a woman burning at the stake, who during her burning turns into a jaguar. She summons snakes to strangle the people who attacked her. Gabriel also dreams of himself hanging, dying at a tree. When he wakes on the first day of the game, he learns of a series of killings happening across the city. The papers have dubbed them the Voodoo Murders. Hoping it could provide him with material for his new book, he visits Detective Mosley, who is leading the investigation into the murders. Though he ends up finding the police are quick to discount the voodoo aspect of the murders, Gabriel is convinced that they are genuine. Can Gabriel and Grace find out who is behind the killings and convince the police to continue the investigation and stop the perpetrators before it is too late? Or will those responsible catch up with Gabriel first? Gabriel Knight starts as a smooth-talking womanizer, more interested in the ladies than being a hero.
I've had a lot of women, Father.
A lot? More than 10?
Yes, Father.
More than 20?
Yes, Father.
Jesus.
More than 40?
Yes, Father.
Son, I don't think this is a matter for a priest. I think you need a good therapist.
All he wants to do is write his book and meet all the women he can along the way. But unfortunate for Gabriel, he feels compelled to uncover the voodoo cult. And unbeknownst to him, the cult and his family have been connected for generations. Gabriel Knight in the 1993 version is voiced by the one and only, the legend himself, Tim Curry.
I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism. Space!
And Jason Victor in the anniversary edition.
Gabriel, you don't seriously think she's interested? She can have any man in the city. You know, men with bank accounts.
Grace Nakamura is a strong-willed lady. She is the assistant at the bookstore and helps Gabriel along the way by researching different subjects about hoodoo and voodoo. And lucky for Gabriel, she is more than capable enough to pull his ass out of the fire when he needs it most. Grace is voiced by Leah Remini in the 1993 version and Cissy Jones in the anniversary edition. Detective Frank Mosley is Gabriel's longtime friend within the police department. Mosley is a great ally to have with our heroes having to put their lives at risk dealing with the black voodoo. Frank is voiced by Mark Hamill in the 1993 version and Ned Clark in the anniversary edition. Gabriel Knight's Sins of the Fathers 20th Anniversary Edition is an amazing game that still holds up today. The story, gameplay, music, voice acting and visuals are all captivating, with many of the horror scenes making me feel very uneasy and on edge.
Gabriel?
What? Can't see.
Gabriel, get in.
Can't. It's too small for me.
Get in, Gabriel.
It's not mine. Too small.
Hide, Gabriel. Hide!
No! Let me out! Help!
The puzzles are fun and enjoyable, with only a couple of instances of moon logic. Though, if you get stuck like me because, you know,
I'm not a smart man.
there is a very helpful hint guide in Gabriel's journal that has saved me many times. I had a blast playing through this game and can safely recommend it to anyone who's interested. The next part of the video will be full spoilers on ahead, where I'll briefly go through the 10 days the game takes place in, using gameplay from my recent playthrough. Day 1. Gabriel wakes up from having his nightmares to be greeted by his shop assistant Grace. He learns in the newspapers of the voodoo murders happening in New Orleans. He decides to go to his friend Mosley for help, but he is already at the scene of the crime when he heads to the police station. Using the police's well-known hatred for mimes, he distracts a cop from his bike to listen in on his radio, and he finds that a murder has just taken place, and heads to its location. When he gets there, he is greeted by Frank Mosley, who professionally shows a civilian a dead body. Malia Getty drives past, and Gabriel, thinking with his pants, instantly falls in love.
And good day, gentlemen.
Gabriel finds some evidence left behind, a snake scale, and he pockets it. Gabriel then finishes off the day at the bookstore, getting Grace to research the scale and to look into the Gettys. Gabriel has another nightmare, the same as before. Grace tells him that the Gettys owned 3 hospitals just in New Orleans and plenty of other assets, and she is way out of his league. But Grace was able to find Malia's address. Gabriel heads over right away to seek information, but the butler won't let him in without a good reason. The Dixieland drugstore is now open, and we speak to its owner, Willie Walker. He sells voodoo paraphernalia, but claims he doesn't know anything about voodoo, and that the things in his store are just novelties and knickknacks. And he claims that he doesn't know anything about the voodoo murders. Next, Gabriel heads to the Voodoo Museum and speaks with a Dr. John. We learn there is a difference between voodoo and hoodoo. Hoodoo is the practice of magic spells, where voodoo is the religion itself. We also learn of a voodoo priestess, Marie Laveau, who was called the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. She used to live there many years ago. Now, her and her daughter are buried in the New Orleans cemetery. Dr. John also tells Gabriel that the voodoo murders have nothing to do with true voodoo. Gabriel heads to the cemetery, and on the side of Marie Laveau's tomb are some strange markings. He copies them down into his journal. At the police station, Gabriel tricks Mosley, stealing his police badge and making copies of the police file of the voodoo murders, then takes them to an artist at the park to reconstruct the voodoo patterns to find out if there's any missing symbols. Gabriel uses Mosley's badge to fake his identity to see Malia Getty, but finds no useful information from her, and then gets kicked out when they find out he is not who he says he is. Gabriel ends the day getting Grace to do some more research for him. Day 3. Gabriel has the same nightmare as the last 2 nights. He goes to the park and gets the reconstructed voodoo patterns off the artist, then heads to the police station to sit in on an interrogation of a junkie called Crash, who knows about the voodoo cult, but is too scared to say anything. Gabriel heads to church, to confessional. When he's done, he steals part of a priest's uniform to make his own. Gabriel then travels to the university to speak to Professor Hartridge, an expert on voodoo, who tells Gabriel about voodoo spirits that can possess people. Gabriel finds out about black voodoo magic, and we leave, letting Hartridge doing some research for him. Gabriel finds the address of an old lady from the drugstore and impersonates a priest to gain entry into her house. While we talk to her, Gabriel makes a cast of a bracelet shaped like a snake she has, and we find out more about the history of voodoo in New Orleans. That night, Malia stops by the bookstore and spends the night with Gabriel.
Oh, I'm afraid St. George's is closed for the day.
I'm not a customer. I'm here to see the owner.
Why don't you just leave your name and number with me, and I'll tell him you stopped by.
Listen, if Gabriel is here, he'll want to see me. Is he? Here?
I really couldn't say for certain, but in the morning...
Gracie, say goodnight.
Day 4. Gabriel doesn't have the nightmares that night, but wakes up alone as Malia left before he woke up. The newspapers are saying that the police have solved the voodoo murders, and they're closing the case. We follow this up with Mosley, who tells us that the higher-ups in the police have closed the case because they chalk it up to mob killings from out-of-towners. Though Mosley will reopen the case if Gabriel can find evidence that the voodoo aspect is real. Gabriel visits his grandmother, who informs us that his last name is originally Ritter, and his ancestors were from Germany. Upon returning to the bookstore, we sell our father's painting, and use that money at the drugstore to buy a voodoo mask. We then head to a bar to help a man win a game of chess, and in return, he makes a snake bracelet out of the mold we have. Gabriel then finds Crash at the church. He is sick and scared, and only talks to Gabriel when he is shown the bracelet. We find out from Crash that the cult runs deep and has infected every part of the city, and that their headquarters is somewhere underground in the French Quarter. Then without warning, Crash seems to get strangled to death, but there is nothing there. We head back home and call Wolfgang Ritter in Germany, who informs us that we are in great danger and need to head to Germany to be safe. Declining this, Wolfgang offers to send us a journal from one of Gabriel's ancestors. Day 5. In the morning, Gabriel receives the journal from his great-uncle Wolfgang. He reads of a man named Gunther Ritter, a witch hunter, who when trying to track down the cult, fell in love with a woman who turned out to be the very witch he sought. She ends up stealing a talisman that was very important to the Ritter family. The phone rings, and it's Professor Hartridge, who very excitedly tells us that he had finished his research and needs to speak to us right away. But before we leave, Grace informs us about the research. She found out about a murder that matches the voodoo murders that happened 100 years ago. When Gabriel reaches Hartridge, it is too late. He is being killed in the same way that Crash was. Before we leave, Gabriel takes the notes the professor found. Gabriel heads to Madame Moonbeam's shop to seek information about the black voodoo magic that's been happening, but Moonbeam is not willing to share that information until we can prove to the spirits that she speaks to that we are a trusted friend. Once we do that, Moonbeam helps by deciphering the code that was on the tomb back in the cemetery. Gabriel visits the Voodoo Museum and is attacked by Dr. John's snake. After fighting it off, it ends up leaving a scale on Gabriel's face. Upon closer inspection, it is an exact match for the scale we found at the lake. After taking all this evidence to Mosley, he is convinced and reopens the case. Day 6. The morning starts off quite shocking.
Oh, what the fuck?
The cult knows we are onto them and knows where Gabriel lives. Mosley leaves us with a note and a key to his office desk. He has gone in hiding after finding out there are high-ranking city officials in the cult. Gabriel then breaks into Mosley's office through its window and takes some police trackers from his desk. But when he tries to leave, he is then attacked by the cult using their voodoo magic.
When am I meant to put a tracker on?
Gabriel uses the code Moonbeam Deciphered to work out what the drummers were saying, as the cult is using drums to send messages throughout the city. Gabriel then hides one of these trackers in one of the coffins at the Voodoo Museum, then heads to the cemetery to leave a coded message for Dr. John, telling him to bring the coffin to the swamp so we can track him to the cult's meeting. Gabriel uses the tracking device at the swamp to find the cult's location. He puts on his disguise and stumbles onto a ritual and witnesses Dr. John watching over the lower Tetelo possess Malia Getty. Gabriel is then exposed, knocked out, and left for dead.
I can smell his blood in your veins.
No.
Oh man, I got fucked up.
Day 7. Gabriel wakes at home. Grace rescued him. She followed him into the swamp the previous night. Gabriel calls his great uncle Wolfgang. Wolfgang tells him all about the Schottenjägers, Gabriel's ancestors, shadow hunters, and tells him all about the evil Loa, Tetelo. She is more powerful now that she has access to the Ritter talisman. It was in the Ritter's family's possession for centuries and contains real power. Gabriel is told that he needs to get the talisman back if they are to fight Tetelo. Gabriel heads to the cemetery to the Getty tomb to try and find the talisman, but instead finds Mosley's body. He is knocked out by an unseen force, and then wakes to find that Mosley's body is gone, but his wallet was left behind. Gabriel uses Mosley's credit card to fly to Germany and seek aid from Wolfgang in person at Schloss Ritter at Rittersberg. When he arrives at the castle, he is greeted by Gertie, who informs him Wolfgang is gone, and that he might be able to find out where he went in the library. But the problem is, the door will only open to a Schottenjäger, and Schottenjägers are chosen by God. After reading an ancient scroll and using items all scattered throughout the castle, Gabriel is able to complete the tasks needed, and upon kneeling at an altar of Saint George the Dragonslayer, reads the scroll. That night in his dreams, Gabriel has a vision. He swears an oath and is purified by fire, and then made into a Schottenjäger.
The dragons.
Day 8. Now a Schottenjäger, Gabriel has access to the Ritter library. After finding a secret room in the library and solving some more puzzles, Gabriel deduces that Wolfgang has gone to Africa to find the tomb of Tetelo and the talisman. And with that, we fly to Africa.
God. Oh no, actually it worked.
Day 9. In the tomb that was in the book Wolfgang was studying, we find out the tomb is built in a ring with one room in the middle. While exploring the outside ring, we find dead bodies in 12 different rooms. We also find stone plates and a key. Once the plates are in the correct rooms, we use the key in the third room, and we hear another door open somewhere. Then the bodies come to life and attack Gabriel. After nearly getting killed, Gabriel is saved by Wolfgang, and the two of them just barely make it into the inner room of the tomb. They find that the talisman is in a stone container. They can't open it and will need a sacrifice, a heart, to open it. They see a dead body on the ground, and while Gabriel is trying to get its heart, Wolfgang sacrifices himself and unlocks the container.
Wolfgang! No! No! Tetelo, you're gonna pay for this, you bitch!
But that night, at the bookstore, something comes for Grace. Day 10. Gabriel flies back to New Orleans and organizes the body of Wolfgang to be sent back to Rittersberg. He cannot reach Grace or Malia. Though he has some idea of what he has to do, he has no idea where he needs to do it. Gabriel finds a note at the bookstore from Malia. She writes, "Tetelo knows we have the talisman and has taken Grace. Malia is fighting to save Gabriel's life, but Tetelo is too strong now. Malia begs for us to return the talisman and leave New Orleans to spare his life." At that moment, Gabriel hears a noise from his room. It's Mosley. He faked his death in the tomb and then escaped. Mosley tells Gabriel he has more information on the cult, that there is a mayor, some high judges, and even cops involved. The team make a plan to find the headquarters, save Grace, and collect as much evidence as possible to take to the FBI. Gabriel ends up finding the cult headquarters underneath the church, using a secret elevator in the confessional. He uses the key that he found in Africa to activate it, and leaves the tracking device and the key in the booth so Mosley can find him later. Sneaking around the building, its layout is similar to the tomb found in Africa. He finds masks and clothes for disguises, and a notebook with a list of the Geddes tribe members and their corresponding drum notes. Gabriel also finds Malia. She's having an argument with Tetelo about what needs to happen that night. Using the drums in the center room, Gabriel gets Dr. John out of his room to steal a key to the locked door. Behind the locked door, we find Grace, and as we go to wake her, Mosley finds us. We get into our disguises and get ready for the final confrontation with the cult. When we arrive at the ceremony, Grace is placed on the sacrificial stone, and Malia is already possessed by Tetelo. Right before Tetelo can sacrifice Grace, Gabriel stops her. He is able to use the talisman to distract Tetelo long enough for Grace to get away. Dr. John tries to grab Grace, but is shot dead by Mosley, who then in turn helps Grace. Throwing the talisman to Mosley, he and Grace are able to escape, but leaves himself defenseless. Gabriel is then able to grab the Getty idol, which he destroys. It causes the ground to erupt and break apart, causing Malia to fall in. Gabriel is quickly able to grab her just in time to save her, but Tetelo slashes at his arms out of spite. Malia knows for this to end, she has to die, and with that, she lets go of Gabriel's arms and falls to her death. We leave Gabriel and Grace going over what has just happened and what they need to do next.
I think it's over now.
I'm sorry about Malia. I know you cared for her. You've changed, you know?
Have I?
Yeah. So are you gonna do it? Be Schottenjäger?
I'm going to try. Don't worry, though. You'll be back in school, safe and sound.
I don't have to go back. There's a lot to learn right here. A spiritual path can be more important than a path of the mind, you know?
Well, you're welcome to stay, Gracie, just as long as you don't expect me to know what I'm doing.
This is a historical moment, isn't it? 300 years ago, the Ritter talisman was stolen by Tetelo. She used it to draw her family to power while your family withered. Now she's gone and your family's restarting. It almost makes you wonder if it wasn't supposed to happen that way. You know, good coming from evil.
You think too much.
But really, I think the most tragic thing was all those generations of young women,
Yeah.
like Malia, trapped by this large, overriding personality, forced into a life of horror.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of living with you, Grace.
You know when I said you'd changed?
Yeah?
I was wrong.
Are you sorry?
Nah.
Thank you very much for watching, and if you've made it this far, I'd really appreciate it if you sub to the channel. It would really help me out. But until next time, take care.